There's this recurring joke on the internet that California is a mental illness. And you have to wonder what gets people to say something like that. Unfortunately, you don't have to look far in order to find out what they mean, because the Californian legislator doesn't make any sense whatsoever. I mean, take for example this law, which passed several years ago, saying that people who willingly infect others with HIV should be punished less. I like that the legislator couldn't sleep at night because they realized that someone out there is willingly infecting a healthy person with HIV without telling them, and they're being punished too much. The system is just too cruel to these people. So what needed to be done was to lower the punishment, make it a misdemeanor. You know, it's like driving without a seatbelt. That's also a misdemeanor, which apparently is now in the same category as willingly infecting someone with an HIV. So naturally, as many of you probably already figured out, the AIDS problem in California now exploded. But luckily for the lawmakers, they have the skirt of racism to hide under. Without racism, you might have the legislators be able to be held to account. But, you know, fortunately for them, the ever great skirt of lady racism is available for politicians to hide under. So no consequences were being dragged. No people were being held to account. And probably most people don't even know why the AIDS is spreading in California now. And then you also have other interesting takes. Like, for example, did you know over 75,000 prisoners were released out of jail because of COVID? Now, what's interesting is even after the problem stopped, even after the first wave, they kept releasing prisoners. I mean, at one point, they even stopped saying it's about COVID. Like, they just kept releasing inmates. Some of them dangerous felons, like some of them with murder convictions and whatnot. So, this would make sense if the prisons were overly populated. But apparently no, because you can still be imprisoned. Like, for example, breaking the quarantine. So, dangerous murderers need to be safe from the sickness, and they're allowed to walk out of the prison. But citizens who break the quarantine, they get to be placed in the prison. Does this make any sense to you? Because you're from Romania, none of this makes sense. And all of this has predictable ramifications. I mean, I don't need a crystal ball in order to tell you that this is going to raise the crime level. Especially during this time of year where you had huge marches that were advocating for defunding the police and demoralizing the cops, treating the police like villains. All of those happened during the pandemic, by the way, when it was so dangerous to keep people locked up in prison because they might get sick, and where people who broke the quarantine were arrested. No, like, those marches were allowed, and obviously this demoralized the police. So, is it really that shocking that the crime managed to reach RoboCop levels? Because that's what happened. Now, just so you can understand how bad the crime is, I usually don't read from California local newspapers, but every now and then you have like one of these things that make world news. And the reason that this made world news is because it affected a celebrity. See, when common people get affected, no one cares. But when a celebrity gets affected, even tangentially, it makes world news. So this happens to be Lady Gaga's dog walker, who was unlucky enough to have something valuable. You see, Lady Gaga's dog is a breed dog, and it's priced around $1,500. Now, I don't know whether or not this is considered expensive in California. In Romania, it's kind of expensive, I suppose. But I wouldn't say it's expensive enough to get unhinged criminals to think it's worth the risk spending their entire life in prison over taking another man's life, which is exactly what happened. 3 individuals approached Lady Gaga's dog walker and shot him, leaving him in a ditch, and then stole the dog. They didn't know it belongs to Lady Gaga. They just know, well, it's an expensive dog, so why shouldn't they have it? And you're thinking about this, right? So 3 people. The dog is around $1,500. Divided by 3, that's like $500 each. But they don't have the dog's pedigree, so they probably wouldn't be able to sell it for $1,500. They'll probably sell it for half. So that's like $250 each person. And for that, they decided to shoot a person. They decided to try and take another man's life. That's how fucked up things are in California. Like, this would not happen in my country. I mean, if it did happen, it would be incredibly rare. And it would make national headlines, regardless if a celebrity is involved or not. Like, people in my country don't just do that. It's just abhorrent. It's, well, you know, like, luckily the dog catcher managed to survive. He went to the hospital. Missing a piece of his lung, though, so his entire life is going to be affected by this car. And there was no national outrage over this, no protesting, no nothing. It was just something that came up in the press for a couple of weeks and then disappeared. And I know I have a couple of subscribers from California, and I have to wonder, like, man, you can't live like this. Like, how do you feel safe sending your kids to school when you read that in the local newspaper? And this is in the rich area of town. Like, I'm curious, like, what happens in the poor areas of town? I mean, I get to see on the Twitter pictures of people having homeless individuals coming up on their property, setting up tents, playing loud music during the middle of the night, shooting heroines in their arm, and then when the guy calls the cops say, well, they can't do anything about it. And the guy goes like, well, okay, if you can't do anything about it, then I'm just going to throw their tents away. No, if you do that, then we're going to have to arrest you because that's their property. And California is one of the wealthiest states in the US. And it has one of the largest homeless population because it also has one of the largest income disparities. And it's being ruled by left-wing politicians, the ones that are genuinely supposed to be for the people. Last time I checked, I thought the right-wingers are the evil ones. The right-wingers are the party of the rich and the wealthy and the corporations and the banks. And it's the left that cares about the little people. But reality seems to show you a different picture. So you gotta wonder. It's like, how are people still in that city? How are people still putting up with the exorbitant high prices, with the exorbitant high tax rates, with the unrealistic level of crime, and the Californian culture where a criminal, an outlaw, carries more prestige and is higher up on the social ladder than law-abiding people? I mean, to me, that is just like mind-blowing. I generally don't know how people put up with that, but okay. You know, it seems that finally there is an initiative, all right? Like, the Californian government is having an initiative in order to stop this from happening. So they're now going to pay individuals not to shoot others. This left me completely baffled. Like, I thought that I saw everything. You know, when you saw that with Lady Gaga, I mean, to me, by the way, it was harrowing to read something like that in the papers. It's like, really, you decided to shoot a guy in order to steal around $250 from him. Wow. Just wow. And now I'm reading the fact that people who are dangerous are going to be paid, not even to say, like, to be decent human beings. Like, not shooting others is the requirement of being in a civilized society. You cannot have a functioning society if people just shoot each other on the street. It can't happen. Nowhere around the world. Like, this is what happens in why people call it failed states. I mean, think about it. How can you have a business in such a place? How can you run your life and send your kids to school just fearing every day that this can happen? Like, no, you can't. You really can't. So now they're threatening people with a good time. Like, hey, if you're what we consider to be a dangerous individual, if you do this, we can't stop you from doing it, but we're going to pay you money so you don't do it. What type of logic is that? What type of example are you setting? Again, it's a mental illness. I don't know. So apparently, like, 10 individuals are going to get $300 each month not to be involved in shootings. Nowhere else in the world besides California. Nowhere else are you going to find this thing. Apparently, they're going to give them a life trainer or a life coach or some shit. So I'm really curious. Like, no, seriously, like, if you take money, how do these people function mentally? I'm curious. Like, so you pay someone money. What if he actually gets attacked? So he's not the one instigating, but he needs to defend himself. He's going to go, oh shit, I got the $300 from Uncle Sam. I can't pull the gun out. How does it function? Jesus Christ. and she keeps giving treats and money to one of the brothers because he is misbehaving, how do you think the brother that always follows the rules and always behaves going to feel like? How is it? If you read the Gulag Archipelago, and I'm going to end with this, there is a very interesting quote there where they basically talk about how the cops become the villains and the villains become the heroes. And to find a knife on a law-abiding person was far worse than finding a knife on a criminal. Because the criminal was born that way. It was part of his culture. He was uneducated and he didn't know any better. But for a law-abiding citizen to carry a knife, even for self-defense, it was viewed as almost a terrorist act. It had more expectations of him because he is more educated and he should know better. And it seems that this is what we're seeing in California, just a repeat of what the Gulag Archipelago book is warning us about. A complete inversion of society, like a complete backwards of how the norms are supposed to be. And all I have to say is that history has shown how you can fix this problem. The United States used to have a similar problem with crime back in the 60s and the 70s. And apparently they managed to fix it. Now you probably know about it because of movies like RoboCop, Dirty Harry, Demolition Man. Like a lot of art and a lot of media was reflecting just the huge problems that existed in America at the time because of the high crime rate. And they managed to fix it. All you have to do is to go back in time, see what they used to do in order to fix the problem, and how can they fix it now? In an age where you have so much technology at your fingertips, where you have the power of social media, where you have the power of seeing what people communicate in their smartphones, etc., etc. You have cameras on every angle of the street, and yet you still have like a ridiculous high crime rate. Why? Because it's exactly the same as it was in Romania under socialism. The party was concentrating all of its efforts to police political crime and to check people's thinking, and very little was allocated to actually preventing genuine crime. Let me know what you guys think, and I'll see you in the comment section.